nobody was texting war plans. And that's all I have to say about that.
Welcome back to William on Watch, Deny and Discredit. Trump's damage control SOP. We'll get to the discredit part in just a minute. But in case any viewers are unaware, U.S. military plans to attack Houthi rebels in Yemen were revealed over the messaging app Signal by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth to other high-level members of the Trump administration and, likely inadvertently, to Atlantic editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg. Goldberg had been added to the chat by National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. Some others on the chat included Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. The publicly available Signal app is not approved for the dissemination of classified information by the government. So this was a huge no-no. And the idea that top-level cabinet members were complicit in this is nearly unimaginable. I mean, every one of those people knew better than this. Okay, so in that clip, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth adamantly claims no war plans were revealed during the chat. But here, Secretary Hegseth appears to be specifically using the term war plans because that's the term used by Atlantic editor Jeffrey Goldberg when reporting what he had observed in the chat. So Hegseth was suggesting a distinction between war plans and like maybe attack plans or strike plans or something of that nature. But in this context, the distinction, if any, is irrelevant, since they would all be classified. And just as night follows day, in Trump world, discrediting follows denial. Here, Hegseth appears to be so triggered that he's having real trouble controlling his rage. Check it out.
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, 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 or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does.
So by attempting to discredit the source, Atlantic editor Jeffrey Goldberg, Hegseth is implying that the reporting is untrue. To date, I'm unaware that anyone involved has disputed the authenticity of Goldberg's screenshots of the chat, a couple of which you're about to see. Attempting to discredit someone of Jeffrey Goldberg's stature is a pretty bold move, but Hegseth's not the only one in the administration to attempt it. Others did the same. Suffice it to know that Jeffrey Goldberg is a very highly regarded journalist who's been the recipient of many awards, and also during his tenure at The Atlantic, the magazine has been awarded 3 Pulitzer Prizes, one each in 2021, 2022, and 2023. So any effort to paint The Atlantic as some sort of supermarket tabloid is an obvious deception.
I would characterize this messaging thread as a policy discussion, a sensitive policy discussion, surely, amongst high-level cabinet officials and senior staff. We have said all along that no classified material was sent on this messaging thread. There were no locations, no sources, or methods revealed.
So Caroline's trying to use the same war plans deception as Pete. Surely they can do better than that. Let's take a look at an excerpt from the infamous Signal chat sent by Hegseth to others in the group. This message was sent at 11:44 a.m. and it includes details and the scheduling for upcoming strikes. Team update. Time now, 11:44 Eastern Time. Weather is favorable. Just confirmed with CENTCOM we are a go for mission launch. 12:15 Eastern. F-18's launch. First strike package. 13:45, which is military time for 1:45 in the afternoon. Trigger-based, F-18 first strike window starts. Target terrorist is at his known location, so should be on time. Also, strike drones launch, MQ-9s. 14:10, which is 2:10 in the afternoon. More F-18s launch, second strike package. 14:15, so 2:15 in the afternoon, strike drones on target. This is when the first bombs will definitely drop, pending earlier trigger-based targets. 15:36, military time for 3:36 in the afternoon. F-18 second strike starts. Also, first sea-based Tomahawks launched. More to follow per timeline. We are currently clean on OPSEC. Not war plans, though. Maybe those are birthday party plans, you think? So OPSEC refers to operational security. So Hegseth is saying the enemy is unaware of the attack plans as he is exposing the attack plans himself to a journalist on an unsecured app. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Next up is Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who clearly received the talking points memo. Nothing classified, no risk to personnel, mission successful. Check it out.
None of the information that was on there, though not intended to be divulged, obviously that was a mistake and that shouldn't have happened, and the White House is looking at it, but that none of the information on there at any point threatened the operation or the lives of our servicemen. And in fact, it was a very successful operation, and it's an ongoing operation. But that was the intent behind it, and again, I think the Pentagon's made it clear that nothing on there would have endangered the lives or the mission, and the mission's been very successful.
Is it classified, the information?
Well, the Pentagon says it was not, and not only did they say it was not, they make very clear that it didn't put in danger anyone's life or the mission. There was no intelligence information. And understand, when this story first broke, they were sort of alluding to whether war maps or there was no war plans on there.
But White House Communications Director Stephen Chung apparently did not receive the talking points because he went off in an entirely different direction. Here's what he posted on X. Quote, "The Atlantic story is nothing more than a section of the national security establishment community running the same tired gameplay from years past, from the Russia hoax of the first term to the fake documents case of the last 4 years. At every turn, anti-Trump forces have tried to weaponize innocuous actions and turn them into faux outrage that fake news outlets can use to peddle misinformation. Don't let enemies of America get away with these lies." Wow, Stephen. We talk about projection. So Stephen Chung seems to be thinking really big conspiracy here. I need to make the distinction. This is not a conspiracy theory, but rather a conspiracy lie. And speaking of lies, the right continues to pound us with lies about like deep state and stolen election and all the usual crap in hopes of rewriting history. I mean, they pound it over and over and over again. So I feel like it's important to pound back with the truth every now and then. Mainstream media no longer pushes back in real time or really in any time against right-wing lies regarding the despicable first term of Donald Trump. The documents case Stephen referred to was an absolute slam dunk and anything but fake. The case was thrown out by a partisan judge on the basis of a legally dubious technicality. Trump was not found innocent, and Stephen knows all that, but he hopes we don't. Okay, so as this audience probably knows, the Russia hoax was certainly no hoax. Russian efforts to help get Trump elected to his first term were plainly established in the DOJ's Mueller report. And while collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government wasn't charged, the report did find that Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort did pass proprietary campaign polling data to a Russian oligarch/political operative with ties to Russian intelligence, a guy named Konstantin Kilimnik. And he did so by way of Manafort's deputy, Rick Gates. That happened in August 2016 in New York. Gates later testified to that. He also testified that he, along with Manafort, met with Kilimnik and discussed the polling data and targeted battleground states and overall campaign strategy. So all that begs the rather obvious question, why would Manafort give polling data to a Russian oligarch if not to provide Russia with information to help sway the election? The Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee also concluded in 2020 that Russia did interfere in the 2016 election in favor of Trump, and that Manafort's ties to Russian intelligence posed a, quote, grave counterintelligence threat. Also, Robert Mueller explicitly stated in his report and public testimony that his office made no determination on whether or not to charge Donald Trump with obstruction of justice, not because of lack of evidence, but rather because there is a Justice Department policy that prohibits indicting a sitting president. However, Mueller stated that while a sitting president could not be indicted, he could be charged after leaving office. Hint, hint, hint. You know, I don't necessarily want to relitigate all the various Trump crimes, but the right endlessly lies about these matters, and somebody simply must call them out. And yes, I know the truth is a matter of public record, but if an entire generation of Americans hears only the Republican lies, they're liable to assume those lies to be true. Bottom line, there is no Russia hoax. Republicans and right-wing media promote quite a number of lies that are demonstrably untrue, and I plan to call them out on more of these going forward. Okay, back to the clips.
The administration has repeatedly said zero classified information was sent on that thread. So we got to believe in our president.
Yeah, so no, Tommy, I don't think so. In the next clip, we see Laura Ingraham of Fox News also got the memo. Once again, troops not in danger and mission successful. She mentions Goldberg as though his being in on the chat was the whole issue. But no, the greater problem is the disclosure by Pete Hegseth of the attack plans on an unsecured app prior to the mission. Guess Laura just somehow missed that part of it. Check it out.
When you look at these texts in their entirety, and of course more were released today, they show a serious and thoughtful group of advisors trying to carry out the clear wishes of the duly elected and totally competent commander-in-chief. Sure, we're going to find out again who put the Trump-hating Goldberg on the chat chain and why, but it's abundantly clear that none of this put national security at risk. And there was no risk to our troops, and the entire world is safer because of the actions that our troops took.
And here's Trump explaining Hegseth's role to us.
Should Secretary Hegseth consider his position over the signal?
Hegseth is doing a great job. He had nothing to do with this. Hegseth. How do you bring Hegseth into it? He had nothing to do. Look, it's all a witch hunt.
Politico offered the following. While Trump rarely admits mistakes, many of his allies said Wednesday that's exactly what the White House needed to do, and that it was undermining trust by refusing to acknowledge reality. Quote, "The White House is in denial that there was not classified or sensitive data," said Representative Don Bacon, a Nebraska Republican and former Air Force officer. Quote, "They should just own up to it and preserve credibility." So that would have been absolutely the correct approach, and a normal administration would have done exactly that. Instead, we have an entire administration of liars doing what liars do. So now let's hear from some folks who might not think it's all a hoax. Here's what former Republican Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel thinks about it.
Hegseth, over the last 24 hours or so, has insisted, and he's basically denied, we didn't text any war plans. I mean, it's not true. It's untruthful. Would you agree? And this is the current Defense Secretary of the United States.
Well, it is untruthful. And I'm sorry to see that for obvious reasons, because this is a baseline. This is a new administration that's barely been in office 2 months. And our allies, our friends, relationships that we've depended on for years and years to share intelligence, not just NATO, but countries all over the world. When they see this, they lose trust. They lose confidence in us.
As an interesting side note, Barack Obama wasn't afraid to appoint a Republican, Hagel, to become Secretary of Defense. Trump, of course, would have laughed at the suggestion of putting a Democrat in that role in his administration. But Trump went beyond just installing a fellow Republican. It had to be a Republican who had the only qualification Trump really cares about, someone who has demonstrated undying loyalty to him, despite being otherwise wholly unqualified. This should be a cause for concern. If Donald Trump were to go completely rogue and suspend the Constitution, an idea he has said he's open to, it would be handy for him to have a total sycophant in charge of defense. I mean, in those circumstances, Trump certainly wouldn't want to risk a real American DOD secretary launching a military coup to remove the nation from the grip of a dictator, as we've seen happen in other countries. Next up is Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, the guy who was inadvertently added to the chat.
To what we heard from Secretary Hegseth, they're saying that nobody was texting war plans. Given you were privy to this group chat, is that how you saw it?
No, that's a lie. He was texting war plans. He was texting attack plans. When targets were going to be targeted, how they were going to be targeted, who was at the targets, when the next sequence of attacks were happening.
What does Republican Congressman Carlos Jimenez have to say about it? Classified or not classified?
That's things that should be discussed one-on-one or in a skiff. That's not something that should go out on a signal chat. At least that's what we've been told here. That's what I was taught here when I became a congressman. Those things are discussed in the skiff and only in the skiff.
Here, CNN's Brian Stelter poses a provocative question.
These are shockingly detailed descriptions of the bombs that are about to fall in Yemen, and Jeffrey Goldberg is getting these details many minutes before the bombs fall. If this is not classified information, I would like the president to tell us what would count as classified information.
And here's Senator Mark Warner, Vice Chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, offering his opinion on the subject.
When I read each item, let us know if you believe that would be classified or not. First, 11:44 a.m. Eastern that time. Weather is favorable. Just confirm with CENTCOM we are a go for mission launch.
Classified.
Okay, next, 12:15 Eastern, F-18s launch, declaring this first strike package.
Obviously classified. If the bad guys knew, that would be harmful to the mission.
So the question really isn't so much whether the information being shared was classified. Of course it was. And it really isn't so much a question of whether Mike Waltz added Jeffrey Goldberg to the chat. Of course he did, mistakenly or not. To me, the big question is why the first reaction from the Trump administration was to lie about it. Now, I understand that Donald Trump suffers from some mental condition that somehow causes him to uncontrollably manufacture lies all day, every day. But I really can't believe these others suffer from the same psychological disability. Let's remember, every single one of the people in the Trump administration are effectively the employees of the American people, you and me. And they just wantonly lied to us, their employers. That's obviously unacceptable, and it must be called out, even when it's Donald the Lie Machine Trump. Because lying comes as naturally to Donald Trump as breathing, it's a safe assumption that the directive to deny the obvious originated with him. Anyone else would have instantly seen the problem with that approach, that such denials and deflections would be glaringly absent of credibility. It's like piling stupid on top of stupid. So why do you think the immediate response by the Trump administration was to lie to the American people? Let me know in the comments. There are some other really interesting things to consider about this whole Signalgate business besides what we just looked at today, and we'll be checking that out in future episodes. Until next time, fair winds.